Tony Britt Spotter Charts serves sports media exclusively with customized cheat sheets for both prep and game time. Serving over 350 clients at all major networks, 23 NFL teams, and 68 college football programs, including Division II, Division III, and NAIA schools. Variable pricing ensures that small schools receive the same VIP service as ABC, CBS, ESPN, Fox, NBC, and the NFL Network.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? Welcome back to Voices in the Stands. I am Carlo Guadagnino alongside the Misfits from the Nosebleeds, and we are joined by a special guest that's going to try to kind of make sense of what we're all going into here in the last week, Logan Hansen. Logan, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, guys. I've enjoyed listening along. Try to provide some detailed analysis, but also not take myself too seriously. I feel like that's the vibe here, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, if you're not having a cold
I'm
beverage,
going to start this with you because you have been. You started it off last week. You were a little testy about the MPI. We're now here a week later. So I'm going to let you start, David, and then anybody else that has a question, let's just not all yell at once at Logan. Let's not run him out of the nosebleeds right away. Do it orderly. So, David, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Logan. Appreciate you spending some time with us, but really appreciate all of the time that you spend crunching numbers for the D3 community. I on behalf of everybody, thank you, and that certainly does not do it justice for the amount of time you put in. First of all, my question for you is, have you ever applied to work for the NCAA?
No, but I did send a lot of emails before NPI got adopted to people on the committees to try to say, like, hey, I don't think you all realize what sort of a mess you're going to have on your hands if you adopt this the way that the original proposal was being floated. One of the first people I heard back from was, I think it's the AD at North Central, was like, okay, yeah, let's talk about this. We need to figure something out, because one of the things, so like if you look at NPI right now and look at the teams at the very bottom that have no wins, they're judged completely based on how bad the worst team is that beat them. And originally that's how NPI was going to be for undefeated teams. And it was going to be even worse comparing undefeated teams than it is now, where you would have been judged 100% completely based on just the best team that you've beaten. So if you beat the team that was like, number 30 in NPI and didn't play another top 100 team, you would have been rated ahead of somebody who beat 5 teams that were all ranked 35 to 40. So I think my incessant emails is part of the reason that NPI is not as terrible as it could have been, but still not ideal.
Cool. That's good to know that you saved us from absolute craziness. So essentially two questions, and then I'll let everyone else go. First of all, what's the one aspect that you would change on NPI? And then second of all, assuming this may be the answer in terms of margin of victory, how much of a component should that have in relation to the overall NPI ranking?
The number one thing would be including margin of victory. It's one of the ground truths of sports analytics. In any sport, margin of victory is a better measure of team performance than straight up wins and losses. But I think I would do it a little differently than I think a lot of people think, because if you're trying to create a predictive system of saying how good is a team going to be in the future, then just use margin of victory. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose. Like a 1-point loss to North Central is going to be better than a 50-point win against somebody at the bottom tier of the division, right? But I want, if I had my druthers and I could make a system from scratch, every win would increase your rating, every loss would decrease it. So it wouldn't necessarily be, it wouldn't be the same as like my predictive ratings by any means. And you'd also still need to have, multiple quality wins on your schedule to be rated well. If I was making a system the way I wanted it to be made, right? Like if North Central was beating everybody the way they are this year, but instead of having, a good win against Oshkosh, a good win against Wheaton, if it was just like one good win, they'd probably still be in the same spot they are now, just because I know if we're talking realistic it is to get different things through CAA. I think with a pressure, you could get some sort of margin of victory worked in there, but I don't think they would stomach it if it was just based on margin of victory. Like the wins and losses obviously have to matter more than the margin of victory. So I don't know if I completely answered your second question there, but that's kind of where my head is at with what I'd like to change with NPI. Something like wins above bubble or strength of record. Like I've got those on my website. Those would be what I would like to prefer the system to use. But you can mix in a little bit of margin of victory. So when there is an outlier like North Central in terms of margin of victory, it understands that, hey, just these wins and losses aren't telling the whole story.
Right. Now,
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Mikey and crew, hold on just a second. Let's get this fancy tuxedo wearing guy up there in the corner his time to shine. He brought out his special shirt just for Logan, so we got to make sure he gets to go next. Tony, what do you got?
I did. I actually pulled this one out. I actually got this one washed for you, Logan. So you should feel really special for that. I've always said, right, like I'm MPI dumb, right? Like I never really, I get the concept of, I get what it's trying to do, right? It's trying to take kind of like that human element of five folks in a back room with some cigars, kind of picking and choosing who goes where. I get the intent of it, but I still kind of don't, right? So for the Utica fans up in Empire 8, we're probably right there at the bubble, right? Who should like fans from Utica, who should they be rooting for? Who should they want to lose and want to win? Like I'm still not sure, right? Like we don't want to root for Portland, but should I be?
So, just in general, for any bubble team right now, the people you should be rooting for, your own team. Most teams have still got one game left to play, right? You got to take care of business there. And then beyond that, your conference opponents and whether they win or lose isn't going to make very much difference in your NPI, because a win from a conference opponent is a loss from a different conference opponent that you also played. So that's a wash. So it's really based around your non-conference opponents. That's where you can actually see your SOS move up and down from week to week, is whether your non-conference opponents do well. So you want your non-conference opponents to do well. You want the other bubble teams' non-conference opponents to do poorly. Same if you're looking at like top 8. So like right now, Wartburg is sitting at 4 behind Christopher Newport, but it's pretty close, right? So what would help Wartburg? Well, their non-conference opponents were Monmouth and Stout. Monmouth is probably going to win, right? And then Stout has it's a WIAC game. They're always competitive. So if Stout can get a win, I think they play River Falls this week. If they can get a win there, that would be huge for boosting Wartburg's resume relative to Christopher Newport. So you want your non-conference opponents to do well, other bubble teams' non-conference opponents to do poorly. And if some of those bubble teams can lose, hey, that's even better, man. So that's kind of what the simplified version of what you should be rooting for here.
Crew, I have a feeling that you have some of those bubble questions for Logan. So go ahead, Crew.
I actually don't have too many, just because I've dug into it, and Logan and my good buddy Riley from True to the Crew, they've kind of filled me in the last couple of days on the teams. Some of the teams that we'd like to lose. Obviously, we want Wisconsin Whitewater to beat Oshkosh. That helps. I don't know as far as like what's weighted the most, if they're all weighted equally, as far as which of those helps more than others. My my only thing would be like, look, if we get in, then great. Last year was a year that we never would have gotten in if it was a committee. We had 2 conference losses. It wouldn't have happened. We would not have made the field. This year is probably, unfortunately, going to be the reverse, unless we have some things go our way, which I've still got my fingers crossed. I'm still going to be bugging Hanson about it in the next week or so, looking for outs, right? But ultimately, like, to me, I'm more interested, with a situation like something that should, like North Central is the defending champ, right? I don't know if it makes sense to do this, but is there a way? My question would be like, is there a way where the defending national title, the defending national champion is undefeated? Can that be some kind of a, like, I don't know. I don't know anything about models, computers, anything like that, but everybody in the country is going to agree that a team in that situation should be, top 1, 2, definitely have home field advantage. Certainly not outside the top 4, right? So I've heard tweaks are coming. I don't know if that's actually going to be a thing, with how the NCAA is, but that would be really my question, is like, are there not some just easy common sense things that we can implement, and why is it taking, trial and error at this point?
So yes, there's things they can do. Obviously, they forced NPI through in a matter of months, right? So yeah, they can do whatever they want as far as like the NCAA and the members. It just takes, votes. And at this point, NPI is in the bylaws. So you've got to change the bylaws to change how this works, as is also the case for like the top 8 protected seeds. That's in the bylaws, I'm pretty sure. So you would need to change the bylaws to change how that all works. But yeah, there's a way to do it. And they used to have it written into the bylaws that if there's undefeated teams and the primary criteria is similar enough, you can look at previous playoff performance and use that as a factor in seeding, which it would make complete sense to do that again, to say, hey, if you've got your top 8 seeds and 90% of the time, most of them are going to be undefeated, right? You can just say in the bylaws, yeah, the committee has carte blanche to just change these how they want, and here's what they can consider. And one of the things they can consider is, hey, are you an undefeated defending national champion? Yeah, we can make you the 1 seed. That makes sense.
Right.
So there's things they can do. It just takes people with, a dog with a bone to be able to talk, getting a little bird in the ear of the people on the right committees that can propose things or can, pass the proposals once they come in front of the president's council, the management council, the championship council.
Right.
Mikey?
I got 3 questions for you, Logan. The first
All right.
one is, have you or Pat or anybody involved with D3 football, have you guys had any conversations with the committee or people on the committee about possible changes coming? And if you have had any of those conversations, how are those conversations being received by the people that are hearing them? Are they positive, negative? Are they understanding what you're saying, or are you falling on deaf ears?
Well, I host a podcast with the chair of the national committee this year, where we give out the coaches of the week. We don't talk much about the playoffs and NPI. We talk a little bit about it, and I don't think I'm not. I haven't told him that I'm gonna, start sharing those conversations publicly. But what I would say is the concerns that were present that caused NPI to come through and look the way it does in football are still there, right? So I can tell you right now, and like Coach Cat from Lake Forest, who used to be the national chair, he has said publicly this year that he doesn't think a 3-loss team should ever be allowed in through Pool C as an at-large, right? I think if we're thinking, hey, this year, even if the WIAC gets 4 teams in and they all win a game or 2, that things are going to change, and next year winning percentage is going to go down in the weighting and SOS is going to go up. I think people are going to see 4 teams from the same conference make the tournament, and they're not going to like that, right? Because if you get 4th place in your conference, why do you need to be in a national tournament, right? That's going to be the argument. And the reason that NPI got pushed through, because some from these smaller conferences thought that they didn't have a seat at the table in the discussions for at-large bids. So those conferences and those voices are still going to have a say in whatever the next iteration of NPI looks like. So I don't know that I'm super confident that things are going to look a whole lot better for football moving forward.
Yeah, I think that kind of coincides a little bit with what when Pat had the current committee chair on his podcast, he had mentioned in the previous system that the loudest voices in the rooms were making some key decisions on teams. And if those voices are still pretty loud, then yeah, it might be hard to get those decisions passed. That's pretty interesting there. My second question would be, I'm hearing a lot of chatter and I'm confused myself. I want to hear it laid out early in the week for everybody. When we're looking at the MIAA, who's getting in, what needs to happen? Because there's a mess going on right there. Could you help us out, all of D3 football out with that situation?
No problemo. So I actually heard back from the conference office last week. I emailed them and said, hey, this is going to be a potential tiebreaker if Hope wins out and Alma loses to Adrian in week 11. And they said, yeah, here's our tiebreakers. Their tiebreakers are just like everybody else from the top, head to head among tied teams, win loss versus other teams in the conference in descending order. Though when it's a 3-way tie with 1 loss, none of those ever break the tie. So it's always like the 6th tiebreaker that actually breaks it. So for the MIAA, that tiebreaker is overall win loss. So if it's a 3-way tie, Alma's eliminated. Then you go back to the top, head to head between tied teams. Hope beat Adrian. Hope gets the AQ. Adrian at 9-1, they're still getting in. Alma, if they have 3 losses, they are not getting in. So it would be a 2-bid league if that 3-way tie happens, with Hope getting the AQ, Adrian getting an at-large.
Wow, that's really interesting. And then my last question for you is, you make a brilliant mock bracket every week. I think a lot of people look at it. It gets big views on Twitter, so I can tell that people are really interested in it. As you're looking at it, and now we're getting pretty close to the real thing here, what are some teams that you are looking at as far as they could be in a getting screwed situation, similar to maybe how Endicott felt last year, maybe UW Platteville? Who's going to be in a tough situation where they might be on the wrong side of what they deserve?
The island schools could end up getting in a bad spot. And it's going to kind of depend on whether Barry can get that final top 8 seed. If John Carroll passes them, it's going to be close. John Carroll's got a competitive game coming up this week. Barry, not as much. So Barry's NPI with a win is probably not going to budge. John Carroll's with a win is probably going to go up a little bit. So that's going to be pretty close. I think Barry should get that final top 8 seed. But if they don't, and then you end up with 6 island schools that all need to fly somewhere, and then you'll have whoever gets in from the ASC, and you'll have Trinity. They're going to probably end up needing to play each other first round. Barry can drive to DePaul, but I don't think anywhere else. LaGrange can get to Barry driving, but then you got Whitworth and whoever wins the SCIAC at this point is looking pretty likely that Chapman is going to win that out there. But those schools are going to be in a weird spot, especially if it like Trinity and Hardin Simmons, if the committee looks at them, and I'm sorry here, crew, I'm assuming that Hardin Simmons is going to win next week and not let you guys get the AQ and sneak in the back door there. But that if they could force them into a pigtail or something like that. Really, there's no rules outside of the top 8 of what they're supposed to do with seeding, other than just let the higher seeded team host as long as they filed to host. So that's kind of where I see it going. But then the other thing that I think is likely to happen is those schools in the upper Midwest are going to be all pretty highly rated, right? So you'll have potentially Central if they beat Co. That looks like a toss up. But if Central wins that game, St. John's, the 2-loss WIAC schools, they're all going to be probably high enough in NPI that they should get a first round home game. But just the way the geography is going to work out, it's really unlikely that they're going to be able to make 8 different pods work out where teams are all driving to, Wisconsin or Iowa or Minnesota. What those teams are going to have to, somebody who should have gotten the right to host is going to have to travel east somewhere to, I don't know, like DePaul or Wabash or something like that. So those are the potential pain points that I can see in this bracket. The island schools and then those upper Midwest schools. And there will probably be one set of teams because Christopher Newport won. There's going to be a set of teams in the Northeast that's going to have to fly first round. So that is also going to cause the committee to look at the total number of flights in the bracket, right? So if they know, all right, we have to have a flight out of New England and we have to have all these flights for the island schools, we need to do something with the seating to limit total flights so that we don't completely blow the budget on the entire tournament. So I don't know. There's a lot that they have to consider when they're doing this. And I know they all want, the people on the committee, they sign up for that committee because they want to, put out a good product. But then when they send in a bracket to the penny pinchers at the NCAA, sometimes those guys say, hey, you've got like a dozen flights in this bracket. No way. You go back to the drawing board and give us something that eliminates, 4 of these 12 flights.
Wow.
And then, Logan, the only question I have for you is, for those people that are keeping an eye on Region 2, what are the surprises that could come out of Region 2 come Sunday? Are there any? Or are we kind of know how Region 2 is going to shake out? I mean, I think the PAC is pretty clear. It's W&J's to lose. The landmark is Susquehanna's, the Centennial. We'll talk about it in a little bit after you leave, Logan, but the Centennial seems to be Hopkins versus Franklin and Marshall for the who's going to be the outright, the AQ. Does that conference get a couple teams in? Like, I know Franklin and Marshall and Muhlenberg are kind of bubble schools.
So right now, the Centennial looks pretty likely that they'll get 3 in. Franklin and Marshall, not a shoe-in. If they beat Johns Hopkins, they're like 90% that if they lose to Johns Hopkins. If they win, they get the AQ. I misspoke. But if they lose to Johns Hopkins, it's like a 10% chance that they'd fall on the wrong side of the bubble. And then Muhlenberg is about in the same situation. But if Franklin and Marshall beats Johns Hopkins is still going to be a top 8 seed. So they 100% get probably 3 teams in if that happens. Other surprises, I think at this point, I don't think there'd be a surprise for me too in terms of like a team getting into the field, unless there's a huge surprise in terms of upsets in week 11. So like that's what the surprises would be, not a surprise of like, things kind of go chalk in week 11 and then, oh, how did that team sneak in? At this point, there's enough games played that teams' NPIs aren't going to jump a ton from week to week.
Now, how much does W&J rattling off, 7 in a row since the 2 non-conference games, how much does that help my friend Moose Hogan up there with an MPI ranking, seeing as they went in to W&J and beat them on the first game of the season?
I mean, it does. It helps a lot. When I've tested this. Every win or loss from a non-conference opponent, granted that it's not somebody at the bottom of the barrel who's not going to be included in your team, but if a quality, and it doesn't have to be playoff, just somebody good enough going to get dropped from your best 5 wins. Every win or loss improves or makes your NPI worse by about 0.4. So like last year, Mary Hardin Baylor getting in, they got in by like 0.004. That's how close the margin was from the 12th and 13th teams in NPI. So a single win or loss from a non-conference opponent moves your NPI way more than that. So yeah, it absolutely helps Utica that W&J is winning out. But then also, if the sky falls down and W&J loses this week, that means Utica's NPI would drop by 0.4 from where it was sitting or where we were expecting it to be if W&J won.
And then the last thing I have, and this was more for the guy below you, their crew, how much does the island that Mary Hardin Baylor is on with travel costs and expenses, how much does that hurt them when you're looking at I think I went back through their schedule this year. It was D2, NAIA, NAIA, I think were three games that were in there. Because I know those don't get factored in, right? They don't. They're basically a wash on the MPI rankings.
Yeah, so a school like Mary Hardin Baylor, it really didn't hurt their NPI because their strength of schedule is so high already that if you add who else could have they scheduled that would have been better than Howard Payne? Like who else could have they actually gotten on their schedule to improve their current NPI from where it's at? Because you got to remember too, like you can maybe drop one of those wins if they're high enough value. Right now they'd have 5 if they win next week, right? So if they have another one, maybe if it's high enough value, you could drop a home win against Howard Payne. But it's the opportunity cost of whether that team's good enough to bump you up over that Pool C threshold. And right now that's at like 64.2, 64.5, higher than normal this year. But the teams you'd have to schedule to improve your NPI higher than that are right around how good Howard Payne and East Texas Baptist are. That's the sweet spot of teams you want to schedule in NPI that are, if you're a playoff team, relatively easy to win, but also give you a sizable boost that actually pushes you above the Pool C cutoff. So I don't know what else they could have done other than just win another game.
Right. Well, Logan, I want to say thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything for Logan before we get Tony rolling on covering the Empire 8? For those of you that don't know, make sure you check out the Hansen ratings and toy around with the simulator. It's fun once you start figuring out what the heck you're doing. It's a lot of it's an interesting thing. I still don't really know it. I to quote how your segment starts on Around the Nation, I didn't realize that I was told math wasn't going to be included. I'm really glad that we kept the math to a minimum here in the nosebleeds because other than David, some of us we struggle in the math department. So Logan, thank you very much for taking the time to join us, and we'll keep in touch.
Thanks, Logan.
You betcha. Thanks, fellas. Appreciate what you guys are doing. Keep it up.
Thank you. Tony, it's good to see you from your undisclosed location. You made it back. Your Moose Hogan has gone back into his semi-retirement for maybe retired. Who knows? We'll see how this week plays out. Talk to me about the Utica versus Hartwick, I believe it was, and how the rest of the Empire shook out.
But you know what? Even before that, I think we got to talk about Cortland. You got to give the big guys their due. So Cortland did what Cortland does, and then now five-time E8 champions did what they do, and kind of I've said it from the beginning. If you give Cortland the chance to stick around a little bit, they're going to do it to you. So 44-14 against Brockport. Some interesting numbers against Brockport. Brockport actually had more total yards than Cortland, 336 to 262. They actually had more passing yards, 162 to Cortland's 100, and they outrushed Cortland, 174 to 162. So you might be thinking, so then what happened? Four turnovers by Brockport that turned into touchdowns. That's what happened. And then in late, somewhat mid fourth quarter, special teams 76-yard punt return by Cortland. So the score is really isn't indicative of really. I think Brockport just kind of, I don't know, they got into themselves and they did what they really shot themselves in the foot. But I feel like they could have pulled that game off had those turnovers not been a thing. I really do. So now that I got that out the way and I tipped the cap to the Red Dragons. Utica's senior day. A lot of these kids, these seniors are still near and dear to my heart. My son graduated last year, so I know a lot of these names. I know a lot of these families. And it was senior day. Hartwick came up. I did the Hartwick's head coach, actually, it's Utica alum. And we did what I loved, what we were supposed to do, right? 563 yards Utica of total offense to Hartwick's 136. 306 through the air to Hartwick's 90. Through the ground, their best rushing game yet. Utica had 257 on the ground to Hartwick's 47. 25 first downs for Utica versus Hartwick's 11. Um, the stinker in all of this was, the penalty yards. Utica had 10 penalty yards for 110 yards. We gotta at this point in the season, we can't do that. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. In time of possession, Utica was 4 minutes to Hartwick's 25. So really, all in all, it was over really kind of before it started. Unfortunately for Hartwick and their fans, but that's the way. What we had to do, we had to play the opponent in front of us. It was a great send off, great stat game for those guys, and kind of around the horn. Parts of the E8, St. John's Fisher actually did pretty well. They came out on top in their game as well, and also the Alfred State versus Alfred, which ended up being. It's funny because Alfred State is brand new in the E8, but these two schools are actually right across the street from each other. So I know that's a pretty lively game. It would be kind of cool to kind of actually see that. But Alfred State came over in this one, 35-28. And the St. John's Fisher, I'm sorry, I didn't mention, was 21-7 Fisher against Morrisville. And now we go to next week. Now Utica has to go up. We're going up to Brockport. It's Brockport Senior Day. It's always a chippy game against Brockport, no matter what the situation is, no matter what the standings are. So we expect Brockport to go out there, and they are not going to want to lose on their senior day, but has major implications for Utica, as we all know. So we're going to be rooting hard for Utica, and I think I wrote down I should be rooting hard for WNJ and stuff like that. So those are my takeaways. But great to be back in the studio with the guys and Moose Hogan. He's still trying to get some sponsors for our segment, and we have not been successful so far. So.
Well, and before you run away and we get those I see the bully down there. He's all excited. He's got all of his North Central gear on. I don't think you could put more North Central gear on that beautiful mug of yours. And then, Matt up there who's going to give us the rest of the CCIW. But before we get there, Tony, did I see that, shout out to Coach Rabbie and bringing a winning season to St. John Fisher, first one in almost 9 years. 2016, I saw a post that was the first winning season for St. John Fisher. Interesting enough, Coach Rabbie was able to do that against his former team in Morrisville. Like you said, Cortland did what Cortland does. You can't turn the ball over against that team. They will make you pay for it. And it was nice to keep up with the Pioneers and see that the Moose really put some fear into Hartwick.
Yeah.
Those things being said, I know. Look at David. He just can't. He can't help himself. He's so excited. That first segment, I don't know if you guys caught it. He's got this camera that's it zooms in, it zooms out. For those of you at home that are watching, just pay attention to David's screen. There's going to be some zoom action going on. I don't know what budgetary thing he got from Matt that Matt's not sharing with the rest of us. But sorry, Matt, I don't want you to have to backfire from the budget.
North Central they roll in the dough.
Tell us about the CCIW crew. Let's see what you guys have for us this week.
Yeah, well, I don't, the Zoom thing, it's got to be a setting, I guess. I can't really explain it. There it goes. I have no clue. I'm not technically ignorant, but I'm also not, the most intelligent when it comes to that. So this was a game North Central had against Elmhurst that was, it was kind of tough going into it in a way because, Elmhurst, they've struggled a lot lately. And so you assume that it was going to be pretty brutal, and it was. Dominant win. North Central moves to 9-0, 58-0 shutout of Elmhurst, and it was over really early. The Cardinals scored 4 times in the first quarter, never looked back. Garrett Wilson, very surgical again, 12 of 13, 215 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That was all in the first half. Wide receiver Thomas Skokna, I like to call him Tommy Touchdown, was a human highlight reel. His first touchdown catch was his first catch. He caught it over on the far sideline, zigged and zagged all the way back across the field and into the end zone. I think at least 3/4, if not more, of the Elmhurst defense had a chance to tackle him. And frankly, it looked like not a lot of guys were interested in really tackling him. So, it was a great effort by Thomas. And he also has surpassed 1,000 all-purpose yards for the season. So he's had a great season. Jack Rummel came up really big, 4 catches, 100 yards. Including a 48-yard touchdown. And it's just a consistency with big playability that the offense has. On the running game, we were without Sean Allen again this week. So obviously he's been nursing an injury. But we didn't miss a beat. I mean, Donovan McNeil, 81 yards and a touchdown. The offense averaged nearly 8 yards a snap. And, with Wilson spreading the ball around, they're just an explosive unit. But none of the starters played after the first half at all. Sometimes they'll get 1-2 series in the third quarter, but this past Saturday, they were completely finished. On defense, the front 7 just harassed Elmhurst all day. Eli Rennick was a monster in the backfield all day. 1.5 sacks. Graham Wright, Ramiriam Roby each had sacks of their own. Backup linebacker Philip Carlton Jr. ended up leading the team with 7 tackles and a forced fumble. He was just all over the field, and the defense continues to be among the national leaders in scoring and total defense. Special teams, it's been real special, no pun intended. I mentioned Tommy Skokna. In addition to that touchdown catch, he also had a punt return for a touchdown. And he was zigging and zagging all over the field again. He's a lot of fun to watch. Just a real modest guy. Whenever you see him at a post-game news conference, he's just as humble as could be. Great kid. And I got to talk about Aiden Ellison for a moment. So North Central's up 35-0. There's like 4:21 to go in the second quarter. Lines up to kick a 51-yard field goal. And no idea why Elmhurst calls a timeout. Ice them? Maybe they didn't have enough guys on the field. I don't know. But just as the ball was snapped, they called timeout. So of course Aiden, kicks it, right through the uprights. So because of the timeout, they have to line up, do it again, nails it. and he put a little extra into it. It was 51 yards. I swear it could have been good, at least 60, if not 62, 63 yards. It was well beyond the goalpost. But thinking about this guy, I mean, he's had a couple of chip shots. He's had 4 under 40, but he's also made from 44, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, and 57. And overall, he's 11 to 12. He's missed one, and that was a 56-yard attempt against Oshkosh, and it wasn't short, let me tell you. It's another one that looked like it had the leg for 60. So this guy's a weapon, and he's definitely gonna come in handy throughout the tournament. And it's awesome. It's awesome that we have him. But the interesting thing too is we got another kid, Sean Reineck, who's a great kicker, and we have a backup. We have a second kickoff guy, and he goes in just like you put in your 2 or your 3 at quarterback. We've got that depth at kicker too. So feeling pretty comfortable with all the depth. But yeah, so that's all I've got. I don't want to belabor the point. It was another big win. We finish up this Saturday against Wesleyan. Augie had handled them pretty well, so should be a good day for the seniors, and looking forward to getting through the end of the season and having some fun in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Aiden Ellison. Damn, he's good. He is a great kicker. Like, just the consistency, the length, that, like you said, that could come down big, if North Central's really tested, in somewhere in along the playoffs. So yeah, he's been awesome. A nice pickup, to kind of round everything out, for the Cardinals. So they can pound sand still. I don't care. All right. All right. Well, and sorry for my voice. My boys wrestled all day today in a wrestling tournament, and then our entire club was as well. So I've been yelling across mats all day while battling a little bit of a cold. So, but after this week, North Central's still perfect. Wheaton's 7-1. Both Augie and WashU are tied at 6-2. And then you've got Carroll in Illinois Wesleyan, both 4-4. Carthage, North Park 2-6. Milliken 1-7, and Elmhurst again, likely going to be another winless season for him. But I'll run through everything here real quick. I mean, Wheaton 61-14 over Milliken. Like they just blew him out of the water. I mean, Mark Forcucci, 272 and 4 touchdowns. He had a nice day. Thomas Grupner had a nice day with a pair of touchdowns. Again, Milliken just got manhandled, up in Wheaton. Wheaton was at home, so they're at McCauley Stadium. So again, they're looking pretty good. And again, I think they're, hopefully, I'm hoping, right? I mean, their NPI is 27, so I'm hoping, right, they're a lock for, the playoffs. So, the winner of this Augie WashU game gets the Isthmus Bowl. Now, when I was looking at this Carroll Wesleyan game, Carroll 34, Titans 14. When I looked at it at half, it was Carroll 14, Titans 7. And I thought it would be a lot closer, but I thought those numbers would be flipped. The way that the Titans have actually passed, and Dermot Smythe, he's looked really good all year long between him and Will Nazha. With Naza, I should say it's Naza. I had to make sure I get that right. Really, Dermot wasn't in. Chase Mackey was in. He still threw for 290, but Will Naza 5 for 29. Michael Barnes had the big day, 5 receptions for 147 and a touchdown. So, might be an injury bug there with Smythe, but it's a nice win by the Pioneers. I thought it would have went the other way, frankly. So that was a little bit more surprising than I would have thought over there at Tucci Stadium, because I mean they were at home too, right, for the Titans. So now,
Hey, Matt.
yeah.
So did you know that was the first win by Carroll at Wesleyan in 30 years?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, it was one of my friends and one of the other chat groups mentioned that. Of course, Carroll stepped away from the CCIW for a few years, but
Right.
still, I mean, 30 years to go without a win at at an opponent's place. So that was huge for them.
Yeah, that really was. I didn't even know that. So, that, I mean, it shows how hard it is to win, on the road. And given how well the Titans passing game has been this year, um, that's even a little bit more surprising. But yeah, that's a great win by the Pioneers. So that's awesome. Now, taking a look at, we'll save the Augie Doggies for later here, but North Park Wash U, 42-14 Wash U over North Park. They're 28-7 at half. Frankly, when I was looking through the stat box here, Wash U 398 total yards to North Park's 166. But the thing that really stuck out to me, North Park negative 34 rushing yards. That's pretty significant. Um, I mean, even for North Park, I would have assumed. I mean, you're gonna get something, right? Um, but Wash U again, pretty balanced. They dominated the time of possession. It was a must-win game for them, right? I mean, they needed to get to 7-2, um, because now they're facing the 7-2 Vikings, here next Saturday. And the Vikings, they beat up on Carthage, 23-3, and honestly, I never really once felt like Carthage was ever really in the game. You know, they got a field goal, I believe, on their first possession, but really outside of that, like, um, just never really were really impressive on anything. I mean, the Vikings they were down to their third string running back. Our first string's out with an injury. Hopefully, he should be back this week. And then our second string went down. So Keegan Ott stepped in. Man, he had a great day. He came in, I want to say, halfway through the first quarter, 99 yards. He's someone that he just looks like he's going to be a great running back. He's quick. He read the holes really well. Kind of came in mid game, and just honestly did well. But again, 7 receivers caught a pass, from Jimmy McCoo. God, I wish somebody would get their name right when they're like. I get so irritated because it's a thing for me, right? When I mispronounce a name, like I absolutely hate it. But Matku, Jimmy Matku, that was a couple of times. But again, he didn't have to honestly do a ton. 17 of 25, 160, a pair of touchdowns. Vrabek and Schlancer, 3 receptions, a touchdown each. There wasn't a ton that the Vikings didn't really have to show a lot. They just kind of dominated the time of possession. They never had to show a ton of sense of urgency, and walked away with what I felt was a pretty easy win. And they were interviewing Carthage's coach, since they're up in Kenosha, Wisconsin afterwards, and I think you could tell he was just frustrated, and kind of rightfully so. I felt like kind of feels like Carthage took a little bit of a step back, but Bryce Frank was hurt. He was kind of in and out. It was a Mark Hunter, I think, is their backup. He stepped in here recently, and he's had some decent games, but again, for the most part, they just could not get anything going. Up there against the Vikings. But as I think of a little bit about this next weekend, and I was talking to Mike Shaw, pretty much during the game and up to probably about an hour ago, the Isthmus Bowl founder, and this Augie Wash U game is going to be huge on Saturday, so I'm really excited for it. Both teams are coming 6-2. Hansen ratings. We just had Logan on, right? Hansen ratings has Wash U a 30-24 favorite. And as I was going through, the scoring, the defense, the offense, the lowest sack teams, 2 of the top 3 in terms of sacks by, these teams are, I'm not going to say identical, but man, they're pretty close. Like they're 3-4, 3-5. As you go up and down the standings, but I don't know. I just think as we go into Saturday, I think the passing game is just going to be too much for Wash U. Defensively, I think the Vikings are too skilled across the board, and it's like, gosh, I kind of go back and look at them, and it's like, they gave up over 300 yards and a pair of touchdowns to Dermot Smythe. They also gave up 75 yards to him rushing for the quarterback for the Titans. Vikings have Ben Ludlam, Josh Slim. Hopefully, I haven't heard much about what his injury was, or Keegan Ott now. And gosh, Jimmy McCoo has been running a lot of RPO, and he's been super successful in extending plays. So WashU's going to have their hands full when they come to Rock Island here on Saturday. And again, it's one of those games, man. As a home team, we got to show up and show out, so we can go play that Isthmus Bowl game here in 2 weeks.
Yeah, one of the things I think about, Matt, is as we're at the end of the season and some of the teams that, you talk about not having much to play for, you think about North Park, you think about Carthage, you think about Elmhurst, it seemed like all of them had trouble getting up and playing this past Saturday. You look at the results and, it's tough. It's a long season, and when you've struggled, don't have a lot of wins, it's not easy, and maybe it's not there. So I understand, from a coach's perspective, sometimes they recognize that they're not going to throw their kids under the bus, but yeah, that's a tough situation.
It really is. And, when I think about what are some of the other games that are going on, like you're talking about, I mean, you have Elmhurst and Milliken, again, that should hopefully, right, feel like a pretty good game, I would think, right? You have Carroll and Carthage. Again, could be a pretty good game, for those fan bases that are watching. So, again, I think those 4 teams, those 2 games, again, they're kind of playing a little bit for pride. Elmhurst is trying not to go 0-9. If they beat Milliken, they moved to 1-8. They beat Milliken, so they're now not the last in the conference. So again, what the hell does that mean? But it's a little bit of pride, right? Like I would look at that game and say, I want, at the end of the day, they had, was it Mike Murray that was the head coach there, came back to Titans. We're kind of tired of being the laughing stock. Let's go win a game and go out at least on a temporary high note. So yeah, it's a little tough, but there's just such a separation between the top 4. North Central clearly is a separator, top 1, but really the top 4 and everybody else, I felt like this year it's growing even bigger. And that, again, it's right now it's the fight for third. It's who's the third best team in the CCIW right now. And, we're going to find out on Saturday in Rock Island.
Now, crew, Mikey, I have something to say to you, but it'll come at the end of my segment. Specifically you, Mr. Schultz, you were very pointed and direct at the end of D3 spread option. So we will discuss that. I also understand that I am standing on the table for a team that's 1-9 or 1-8 right now. So I also comprehend that whole part of this to that. First, let's talk about some of the games. First off, Monty Quinn becomes the 12th player in Division III history to eclipse the 2,000-yard mark. He did that mid-second quarter of the game this past weekend against the University of New England. The interesting part about this is with 13:44 left to play in the third quarter, the University of New England took a 30-16 lead on Damian Jones' 4th rushing touchdown of the day. Damian Jones, you'll hear me talk about him when we get to this as well. But Curry proceeds to go on a 31 unanswered point run. They end up getting themselves all the way up. They go from down 30 to 16. They end up 40 to 30, an interception, and then a touchdown as time was pretty much over. Makes it 47 to 30. It moves Curry to 8-1 on the season, 6-0 at home. They have a chance now to win the Conference of New England next week against Endicott. And here are the two lines. Quinn, 34 carries, 282 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Damian Jones, 24 carries, 267 yards, and 4 touchdowns. This kid was a problem. Damian Jones, obviously we know Monty Quinn has been a problem for a lot of defenses. This kid, Damian Jones, was a problem for Curry's defense. Almost every other time he touched the ball, it was, a 10, 12-yard pickup. Talking about some teams moving down from the Curry area and then the New England area down, the big one was the NJAC, where Christopher Newport went in against Salisbury at home, and they did pretty much what we've seen them do all year. I actually heard somebody say they hadn't been tested really late in games because they really hadn't. This one, the final was 45-42. Christopher Newport wins the game, wins the automatic qualifier, wins the NJAC conference, and more importantly, kind of showed on the defensive side of the ball how you can really stop that Salisbury team. I think Rowan had done a very good job earlier in the season, and Christopher Newport kind of piggybacked off of that and really got after the Seagulls. The other 2 games that I was really paying attention to this past weekend, one of which being W&J. As I pointed out earlier, they had 2 non-conference losses early, Utica and Hampton-Sydney. Then they had a bye week, and since that bye week, W&J and Coach Mike Sirianni, who said at the beginning of the season, put some damn respect on the president's name. It's been, year in and year out, the presidents are who is in charge of the PAC conference, and this year, no different. They have at least put themselves in a position to have a share of the title, and they will have senior day this coming Saturday against Teal. And that leads me, Matt, if you could come back, I would like to say this to the whole group. There it is. So I had to really go find this piece of Bethany merchandise that is from about 2012 when I was still a player there. Mikey, kiss my ass. That's my answer to you. Kiss my ass. I believe you said, Carlo. I don't know why we're even talking about this game. Teal's gonna win. Sorry, buddy, but Teal's gonna win. They did not. 17-12. The Bison get a victory on the road. Very, very back and forth game. Teal turned the ball over a couple times in the red zone. Really kind of shot themselves in the foot more than I would say. But I liked Bethany's fight. It's Matt and David were talking about some of those teams that the season didn't go the way maybe they thought it was going to in August. And now here, first couple weeks in November, it's hard. It's hard to put the pads on and go thump around, and it's not warm outside anymore. So on top of having a down season, you're also dealing with the elements. And for most of us, you think about those times back in the day when you'd put your pads on in the wintertime. Real fun once you started hitting, but that first hit on a cold day it's something. So proud of the Bison getting the W. They will, I believe they travel home. They travel to Meadsville to play against Allegheny in the season finale. That game, you can, if you're in the greater Pittsburgh area, that game will be shown on KDKA Plus. So great things happen for Bethany. They get a win this week. They're going to be on TV next week first time since the new KDKA Plus deal with the PAC network. Again, probably one of the better networks if you're looking for free coverage on games. The PAC network does a phenomenal job. They do, and it doesn't cost you anything. You just type in pacnetwork.com and you can go find whatever game you'd like to watch. And if I didn't make it clear, kiss my ass, Mikey. Really, like you really got under my skin with that damn comment. I understand who the Bison are. Trust me. We're going. I got there in 2010. We're 15 years past that. I understand who that team is. Just didn't appreciate it. And neither did they got the W. So the QBs for Cancer will really enjoy that $20. So that being said, let's hear from the celebrities of our group, the D3 Spread Option crew. You can catch them every week. I believe on Wednesdays. Sometimes we have some technical difficulties, and that rolls into Thursday. But this crew gets you that midweek to right before we're rolling into the games. Mikey, crew, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Bethany. I guess they proved us both wrong. I mean, I was more vocal about it. I thought Teal was a better team than that, maybe. But hey, Bethany got the dub, and that's awesome. And I'm happy for Carlo. I had that coming. I deserve that one. That's part of the fun.
Yeah, I mean, those games are hard to pick, man. When you've got two teams that obviously know, hey, this is our chance to get maybe the only win that we'll have for the rest of the year. So happy for the Bison for sure. I mean, those are kids that work hard all season long, and it's great to see them get a W. And again, just like we say on the show, anytime there's a head-to-head, it's a donation opportunity, and it goes to a great cause. So that's really what's important here. Mikey, do you want to recap a little bit, and then I can get into maybe some plans we have for the playoff shows?
Yeah, so this week we had our best week yet, crew, and we both had winning records. I went 6-2, you went 5-3. Aside from that Bethany disaster we both had, especially me, I'm hand up. That was wrong. Got that one wrong pretty bad there. But the rest of the games, man, we were hitting them. And for those of you who maybe aren't super familiar with game spreads or betting against the spreads and how hard it is, it's not just picking winners. Like if you go 6-2. Crew can tell you this firsthand. I mean, Vegas casinos they'd be telling you can't play here. Like that's an unbelievable clip.
Right.
So going 6-2 or 5-3 like this is really, really, really good. So we had our best week yet, and neither of us lost on a single game together. We both hit on Christopher Newport. We saw that coming. LaGrange, we saw that one coming. And Cortland, we had them winning big. So we were both right on the margin of victory there. And then head to head, our QBs versus Cancer games, I went 3-2. Crew went 2-3. And my wins were River Falls -10. I felt confident in that one. That one was covered by halftime. And I had Barry -15.5. That one hit against Maryville. And then I had Ohio Northern. This was one of the games that we were differing on. And what a matchup these two have. This line was Baldwin Wallace -1. Last year, Baldwin Wallace won by 1 point. And this year, it's a 2-point margin. These two teams are just, picking that's like a coin flip game. So I ended up getting that one over Crew. But yeah, like I said, we both had great weeks this week. And it was just really fun to watch. And tell me a little bit more, Crew, about the one that I got wrong. And I boasted about it. Hardin Simmons. I ran off the stats. I said, Crew, you're screwed. I was wrong on that one. Tell me about it.
Yeah, that was a fun game. I mean, it was one obviously I was in attendance for. UMHB, Hardin Simmons. If there's any game to be there for, that's the one you don't want to miss. Man, I mean, here we are. Game 9, and we are for sure playing our best football at UMHB right now, which is great to see. It was always fun to beat those guys, man. And they were undefeated, so ruin their perfect season. Ultimately, if whoever ends up in the postseason from our conference. If it ends up being them, then we want them to represent well. Obviously, I'm still kind of hoping that things go our way and that we get a chance to be in the postseason. Because I'll tell you right now, I've been very honest about the reality of where we're at from my perspective. I'm not saying I know everything. I've been pretty honest about it, for UMHB football. But the team that I saw play on Saturday is not a team anybody wants to see in the playoffs this year. So I don't know if we get in, but if we do, look out, because just like last year, late in the season, we started to gel. If we can sneak into the playoffs, I think we can beat anybody. So a fun game. Glad we got the win as a program. I think we really needed a big win. And yeah, that's pretty much that for that game. The only thing I will also say about our show, about the D3 spread option, is we are planning potentially a live show, the first live show we've ever done. It won't be for the play-in round because there will be only a handful of games for that. We'll do our regular pre-recorded show, but when we get into the big round, right, where we're down to. Is it 32 teams at that point?
Yep.
Is that
16
right?
games.
Yeah, so we'll preview and pick all 16 games against the spread live, either on YouTube or X. We'll see which platform is better for that, and yeah, I kind of want to tease that now, so people
Yeah.
can get the heads up, and I'm really excited about that. It's been a lot of fun so far, Mike.
Yeah, it has. That's going to be an awesome show. And a team that's going to be in that show will be Wisconsin River Falls. And I want to touch on that game. This is another one of the biggest games of the week. Last week, River Falls clinches the WIAC championship. A game I attended, saw it firsthand. I wrote down some notes of some things that just they can't go unmentioned about the tear that this River Falls team has been on. And I stay adamant that this is the hottest team in the country right now. And that doesn't mean that they're the
100%.
best team, but just the red hottest team in the country right now. That's River Falls. I think Cortland's in that conversation as well, who had a big win this week, but I think that's River Falls. They outgained Lacrosse they tripled their number. A funny stat that I drew up is Lacrosse played two different quarterbacks in this game, and neither of them had more than 8 completions, but River Falls had 5 sacks and 3 picks, totaling 8. So they had more sacks and
Wow.
interceptions than any Lacrosse quarterback had completions on the day. And Lacrosse was down 14 points from dang near the jump. So they had abandoned the run game earlier. They were airing it out and they couldn't get anything going. And what that is with this River Falls defense, I'm becoming more and more convinced that no team in the country plays better cover 3 than River Falls. When they get into their cover 3 stuff, man, holy cow. I mean, they are just sound. Their linebackers see the defense, see the offense so well. They have a big, strong, tall safety who plays in the middle. He's like 6'4", 200 pounds. But he
Wow.
moves like a receiver, and he just commands that middle there. And we saw a totally different approach from Lacrosse to attack this River Falls defense, which is playing so well the last 6 weeks of the season now. Last week, Whitewater, they kind of made a big deal about we're going to play man. We're going to play man to man. We're going to load the box. We're going to say, you're not going to run on us. Try to beat our receivers one-on-one. We'll take our guys versus your guys. Obviously, that didn't work out. River Falls didn't even try to run the ball. They said, we're just going to throw it every play, and we're going to pick your DBs apart. So Lacrosse in their defensive, they like to play a lot of zone, is what they do. They'll crush the front, and then they're going to play a lot of zone behind it. They're going to play cover 2, they're going to play cover 4, a lot of quarters, and they're going to mix coverages. So I really wanted to see how this River Falls would handle this. They're going to do cover 2 in the boundary, quarters on the other side. They get a little funky with it, and Blaha had no problem. I mean, when there were several times when Lacrosse was in cover 2, which is for those of you that are listening that don't know, cover 2 means that the corner is going to take the flat area, and the safety is going to take his half of the field over there. So the corner's not running with the receiver necessarily. And there was several times that the corner would take that flat and the receiver would run right in front of the corner on like a slant or a little hitch right there. And Blaha had no issues with it. He saw it, wait for his receiver, boom, deliver a strike. I mean, he was reading the defense so well. There was a touchdown throw where it looked like lacrosse is in quarters. When the defense is in quarters, the corner is going to take that receiver on a vertical route to the post, but it's a really hard route to guard. They had a one-on-one where the receiver was running a post against the corner, just a missile for 20 yards and a touchdown. He was able to read safeties and the defense so well. They're night and day from where they were when they played Oshkosh, and it's just going to be a problem in the playoffs. And I'm really interested to see what this team can do. And it's truly one of the best stories in D3 football right now. The turnaround, the program turnaround that River Falls is on right now.
Yeah, they've definitely skyrocketed in my power ratings, for sure. I've got some more thoughts on them, so I'll save them for closing thoughts. But that's all I've got for now.
Now, I have, before we send it to David and crew for final thoughts, because you see here, we rotate people. We try to get everybody in to talk about and have their final thoughts. Before we do that, I want to extend, maybe, I don't know how I want to extend this olive branch or this proposition that I have, but I see a jury, I see a moderator. I think that we could maybe, if there were two people that wanted to join us here in the nosebleeds with the Misfits, if they wanted to come on and maybe hash out their differences, and they need a moderator because one doesn't want to go on one show and one doesn't want to go on the other show, or whatever that story is, we would just like to say here at Voices, we're more than willing to facilitate and moderate. David will maybe get us a sneak peek at the Solid A suites that go on. I don't know if we can do it there, but maybe we as Pat Coleman says, let's not divide ourselves further. Maybe we really get to the root of this, and we mea culpa everybody. I don't know, just some things that there was an episode of Dingo Talk went out last week. Some people were very upset about it. So maybe we just moderate and we figure out what the best course of action is. Anybody want to jump in on that one? Or?
I'll divide it right now between me and anybody on here that wants to take 20 QBs versus cancer and wants to back the Bears against my Vikings next Saturday. That's what's on my mind.
Well,
where's that game being played at?
Rock Island, baby.
I'll stay away from that.
We're also keeping an eye on an NFL game.
Well, here we go. Vikings 3-1 at home. Their only loss, coming to Wheaton. Wash U 3-1 on the road.
I like that. It's a good stat.
I see what you did there.
Mm-hmm.
David, crew, what do you got for us for these final thoughts?
I'll lead it off real quick because mine's gonna be quick, David. Mine's gonna be really quick, and then I'll let you finish us off here. So I made a little power rating, kind of a creative power rating because it's into 3 tiers. I've split some of these teams into teams that I think can win a national title, teams that can play in a national title, and teams that I think the semifinals are their ceiling. So, and I'm sorry. I hope this doesn't hurt anybody's feelings, like in Alliance, Ohio or anything like that. But I've got teams that can win a natty this year. To me, North Central and Johns Hopkins. Those are my 2 teams that I think are the most complete teams. Balanced top to bottom, physical enough athletes, good enough quarterback play. Those are the teams I think that can win a national title in Division III this year. My teams that can play in a national title, but I don't think can quite win one, I'm going to go Mount Union, Bethel, and I actually do think this River Falls team is not just a fluke. I think that they absolutely are. They're going to be a problem for anybody to prepare for, with a week's notice. I could see them making a run to the Stag Bowl this year. I don't know if they can quite get over the top and win against North Central or Johns Hopkins. To me, those two teams are kind of in a field of their own. And then teams I think that are really good, ceiling is probably semifinals. Wartburg, Cortland, UWP, and UWW, I think, are good enough to make it to the semis, but probably not go past there. So that's all I've got today for final thoughts.
Well, those are some good thoughts. I think that it's always interesting when you're talking about the championship and who can get there. There's always a ton of things to look at. But before I get into that, I got to go back to Carlo's comment about it getting cold and putting the pads on in that first hit. Everyone knows what that felt like except you.
No, I know. It gets cold in Texas.
Well, it does get cold. Maybe not quite the cold that it does in the northern.
Dave, I also had to practice in Salem, Virginia. It was about 10 degrees, so that was pretty cold.
Yes, that is cold. No doubt about it. The other thing I wanted to do is just give another shout out to QBs versus Cancer, but also to my friend Stag again, because I think he's the one that kicked this off at the beginning of, I think it was last season, who saw an opportunity to really do good for a cause. And he kind of put out the call, and I joined in, and Carlo, a lot of guys, Tony did, even Rambo's carry knife, but a lot of people joined in and have made a lot of contributions to quarterbacks versus cancer using their team's performance. Last year, we did it based on points scored. Every point was $1 that we donated. This year, coming in, we thought North Central's defense was going to be pretty good. So a shutout is $100. So there's 4 shutouts. It's been $400 by each guy. And then there's a tiered based on how many points you give up. So really encourage a lot of people, again, if they haven't looked at that, great organization. The other thing I wanted to mention, too, is kind of a follow-up to my rant last week and our conversation as it relates to MPI. I'm not anti-NPI. I just want MPI to kind of get to the point that reinforces that old, the kid in us. We knew when we were kids, when we got together with the kids in the neighborhood and you had a competition, you kind of knew what the rules were, right? And the rules always were you traveled to the team that had earned it. Little league, junior high, middle school, high school, that's just kind of the way it is. So, that's not some sort of, whining by, North Central fans. That is a time-tested tradition that's been around since we've been forever. And we grew up in that context as kids. But the other thing I wanted to touch on, and it kind of gets to your point about the Stag Bowl teams, one thing that's really interesting this year, it talked about here and there a little bit, but not much. Those fifth-year seniors that no longer exist. Teams don't have that stockpile of experience, talent, maturity, leadership in the locker room like they used to. Essentially graduating close to 2 senior classes last year, and that was the end of it. So now that I think about it, some of the teams that took a step back, I think that's what they're missing. They're missing that leadership experience, maturity, all those factors, and they've had to put new guys in. Now, in some cases, there's been a lot of progress. River Falls is one of those teams. And you heard on the game after the Whitewater game, Pat Coleman interviewed several of the guys, and one of the DBs, I can't remember what position he plays, but he talked about the young guys that came in on their defense and how they've really taken to the system and they've progressed. And they've been able to add a lot more to their package throughout the course of the season. That's made their defense much, much better. We know their offense has been really good, but if you look at where their rank is in the NCAA statistics, defensively, they're not that strong. But, and I haven't had time to do this, if you go and look at the last 3-4 games, I got to tell you, I got to believe they're much, much better. So I think that is a big factor coming into this year and explains a little bit of what we've seen with teams stepping back. The other thing that plays into is we got used to seeing teams doing what we expected them to do throughout the season. Well, now as you have that opportunity for young guys to come in to learn, get better, mature as the season goes on, there's a little bit more movement. So that challenges a lot of that conventional thinking when people put their votes in for polls. Polls are always very controversial. Preseason polls, I think, are the biggest joke in the world. They're fun for fans, right? But as you go through the season and people are questioning, you've got a lot of different personalities and perspectives contributing to a poll. Some of them are like, hey, what have you done for me lately? How are you playing right now today? And some are going to say, hey, you can't move up until you beat somebody ahead of you. And so, there's always going to be some controversy there. So I think it's kind of interesting, and some people, they talk about eye test and other people rely on statistics. I just think it's fun. It's good banter. It's fun banter. It's our concept of like, hey, we're hanging out at the tailgate. That's what it's all about. Carlo extending the tea leaf, to mediate. That's awesome. There really shouldn't be the division. We should embrace the fact that there's more of us helping to provide more coverage and more support to these guys that are doing great. We've all been there, right? We've played the game, and it's fun. It's fun to get that exposure. So more voices covering D3 football, I think, is a good thing. So hat tip to Carlo and the rest of the gang. Love what we're doing here. Appreciate what the other guys do for D3 coverage. It's all good, man. It's all good.
David, you made that sound. That last bit was very eloquent. I really liked it. I got nothing else to say. I think we're all gonna just ride off on David's knowledge. We're just gonna, maybe this gets me into the Soliday box. Maybe I don't know about you, Matt. I know that you got to see the glass, but maybe I get allowed in the building this time. Next time I'm in Naperville. It's all fun every time the Misfits get together. I've had a great time. I hope you guys did as well. We'll see you next week. Make sure you check out Option Show. You check out Dingo Talk. You check out Viking Pass. You check out Voices, obviously. And maybe give David and Tony a follow. You never know what you're going to come across on their feeds. So we'll catch you next week, Chuckleheads.